Thank you. Well, welcome to Ladies on a Roll. This week, as you see, I have a very special guest. She is a fantastic and creative photographer and with film. She's a hilarious improvisationalist, and she's the creator of a YouTube channel called 24 Loofahs. Please welcome Fao Freeman. Yay!
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to have a wonderful time talking to you. It's been a really great blast. I got some free water, so let's get started. Yeah. I like the introduction. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. Ooh. Well, as with any special guest, I like to let them pick the topic of what show or movie we're going to do. And Faye, you chose the Twilight Zone series.
All 5 seasons.
All 5 seasons. That was a lot to go through, I tell you what. So I have to ask, why the Twilight Zone?
Honestly, I feel not only because it was significant to my childhood, just I feel like we all have a show that we grow up on that helps you develop your character as a human being. But mostly, I think it's very much influenced a lot of horror culture, and me being a horror movie director, it's just amazing how much influence one man put on a whole decade, a couple of decades of films. Honestly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can totally see when you watch some of these episodes how it's influenced not just the horror culture, but just television and movie culture in general. There was this one episode where the little girl, she hides underneath her bed and she ends up in a different dimension.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that, and it reminded me of the movie Poltergeist, where the blonde-haired little girl, she does something very, very similar and is in another dimension, and she kind of is yelling with this weird echoey thing.
Yeah.
And I can see how a lot of film directors and movies and writers were influenced.
I mean, Perchance to Dream is definitely one that inspired Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, that's exactly the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
and also, I mean, Jordan Peele even came out and said that Us is inspired by Mirrored Image, which is also a really famous, scary episode, especially with the technology at the time that they had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the way that they would manipulate it. I mean, now, of course, you know, you look at the technology and you're like, is that really scary? But I mean, to be in the 1960s with that technology coming out, and what really helped them, I would say, which you probably want to get into at some point, is the black and whiteness of the Twilight Zone compared to other shows at the time that had color. You know, as a photographer, you know, the one thing you learn is that black and white erase it, like you just focus on the detail. You know, with color you're focused on the atmosphere and the feeling, but then when you are seeing a image in black and white of the same person, you're focused on the story and the background. And so I feel like, you know, having the show in black and white makes it more suspenseful and scary because there's nothing really to distract you than what the truth is, and that's reality, sadly. Like, that's the scariest part. Is there's a lot of famous Twilight Zone episodes with crazy stuff happening.
Oh, yeah,
but
definitely.
There's so many good ones where there's nothing happening except for the psychology of human beings, and that's what's scary.
And, you know, what's also interesting about that, as you're mentioning, is that one of the things they do in a lot of episodes you do not see in movies or in TV anymore is that long pause, and it's quiet, and it's a quiet long pause. And it could be them even standing still type of a long pause. Sometimes they're walking around and doing stuff in the scene, but they're not saying anything. But often, for dramatic purposes, it was just this long pause where nobody is saying anything, and the reality of what's going on in the scene or what's supposed to be happening in the plot is occurring, and the character is realizing it at that moment.
Well, that's what's so hard about being especially I would feel, not to, you know, put like my own problems out there, but being a horror movie director, it's hard these days because everybody wants instant satisfaction, Instagram. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, be the weirdo that's like, TikTok's ruining kids. But it's like, you want that instant 15-second gratification. When you're at the movies now, if nobody is talking during a horror movie, somebody has to say something because they need something, you know? And that's what's crazy. If you sit down a kid to watch a Twilight Zone episode now, like, they would probably sit there and be on their phone for the parts that's supposed to get the suspense. So, of course, by the time they get to the suspense, it doesn't hit them because they can't sit there for 5 minutes to build that, you know? You're right. Like, there's so, like, 5 strangers trying to find an exit. I feel I really love that episode.
Really?
Well, I have a few episodes that are my favorite.
I was going to ask you about that. So this is one of them.
One of them, just because, you know, there's 5 strangers wearing crazy costumes, and they're just in a circular dome room. You don't know why they're there. And what I really like about it is the twist at the end, even though I don't know about spoilers anymore because it's been out for so long.
Yeah, I think you're safe.
Yeah. At the end of trying to find their way out, there's a clown, ballerina, all that. One of them finally gets to the edge. They fall out, and it turns out it's a, like, toy for, like, box for Christmas time.
Right, it's a toy drive. They're dolls at the bottom.
But what I love about that episode is, like, that could happen like anywhere. There's so many situations in life when you go to school, when you start a new job, where you are 5 strangers trying to find an exit, which is, for me, quote unquote, trying to find your way through life. And through the experience and collective, you know, dissection of each other's life circumstances, you know, you could learn to just either, you know, live with what you have or try to fight for what you want. But then in the end, it's like the sadness is that some people will fight real hard and they'll never get what they really want, to be seen as a real person. I'm not trying to go like super deep.
No, but this is deep. My goodness, it's so interesting that you are interpreting it so conceptually like that, because that episode to me brought up different feelings and memories. Like when I was little, I used to think my dolls were alive and like they had feelings, and I would cry privately, I should say. I never cried in front of anyone else, but I would cry privately if I thought their feelings were hurt or if I had neglected them for too long. Like maybe I played with the other dolls a little bit more. So I think that's interesting that you went deeper and I went very superficial and emotional.
I think we all have that Toy Story moment. But I mean, that's the, you know, Rod Serling, he went to war. He probably, I don't want to say probably, like, I know that he has like a really crazy background growing up.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just wonder, like it's really crazy. When I saw, when I was a kid, and I heard of Stephen King, okay? I pictured Larry King because he's really, you know, kind of like deep voice, you know.
New York Jew with some glasses.
Well, but here's the thing, like you could
interviewing you.
Yeah, you could say that guy wrote a couple of horror stories, right?
Okay.
But then you look at actual Stephen King, and he's like, yeah, I wrote it, and all, and it's like, wow, like it's just, you know, it comes out of anywhere. And so you look at Rod Serling and you see this guy who might write like a James Bond novel or something, but then he turns out to write just the most like in-depth human emotional experience. You know, it's not just about aliens and robots. It's about the human connection between the dark mystical fantasies that we have that makes us human.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point, because that is how he wrote. And it is, now that I think about it, it is not surprising that you connected to your own emotional way with some of the episodes, because he had a social commentary that if you're not looking at it, you won't see it.
What I love about the Twilight Zone, though, is the fact that, you know, there's being scared of the monster under the bed.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that he pulls back the bed and says there's no monster, but it's the fact that you can, like, dream one up.
Right,
you know?
that you think that there's one there. But that's true to a lot of the different episodes that they had in there. You know, like William Shatner's infamous scene where he's on the airplane and he sees a gremlin. And first, let's just talk about a little bit of the realistic aspect of this. So he is a psych ward patient who got kicked off of a plane 6 months prior.
Yeah.
For the same thing, for having a panic attack on an airplane because he thought something, you know, everything was going to go down.
Yeah.
So the doctor's like, "You're cured. Go back on an airplane." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah. Just, you know, smoke some cigarettes.
Yeah.
You'll be good.
Yeah, cigarettes will cure everything.
Yeah. I swear, I sometimes, like, I want to do the Twilight shot game. Take a shot every time you see somebody smoking a cigarette.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, geez. They were basically promoting it on that show.
Okay, Rod Serling was smoking during his scenes, too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but that was very, just so you know, that was very popular in movies and TV back then. Very popular. Every black and white movie, you'll see some glamorous woman just, you know, with the long cigarettes and you know.
Yeah. It's just, you know, it's so like funny how we go from like how one time period there's people smoking everywhere, and now it's like you show a little bit in the background of your TikTok video and it's like you get doxxed or something. It's just, I mean, smoking, I think, honestly, I will say, I think the Twilight Zone helped encourage a generation of smokers.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I mean, you have to understand, too, that a lot of, like, black and white TV shows, they would have paused moments where the actors in the scenes would do a commercial. Wow. And a lot of times it was promoting cigarettes.
Yeah. I mean, what's really crazy, though, is that it wasn't until the movie Arabian Nights that they actually finally had the technological film frame rate to get a match. So all the other stuff, matches, you can't see it clearly. Smoke is fine, but I mean, until Arabian Nights, they couldn't get that perfect match.
That perfect, really?
And the frame rate, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so there's that.
There's that. Well, how did you even discover or even know about the Twilight Zone? I mean, that's so far ahead of your time.
My father... my wonderful father loved the Twilight Zone, Star Trek. He liked the Night Gallery, which is another Rod Serling series that wasn't even allowed to be released after they aired it. Mm-hmm. That series wasn't allowed to be released until 50 years later and stuff for reselling. But it was just my dad really encouraged me in the horror direction. Was the Twilight Zones. We would sit there for hours watching them.
Wow.
He would dissect them with me, what's going on.
Really?
Even today, till this day, he'll be like, "Hey, Faye, remember that Twilight Zone episode that would help you out with this movie you're doing?" Mm-hmm. Like, I would say my dad really encouraged me when it came to that, and Rod Serling for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, we used to watch the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
And then Artemis Gordy is in one of the Twilight Zone episodes, if you know which one.
I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's the strangers. So basically, who's the stranger? And it's where everybody's in the diner and they're trying to figure out who's the alien. And then,
yes.
Yeah, I really love that actor.
Yeah,
who turns out to be the alien. He's a really good actor. Weird way he passed away.
Is he the operator of the store, like the?
Oh yeah, the ice cream shop.
The ice cream guy. He's in another episode. He's in another episode too. It's called Miniatures.
Oh.
It's just called Miniatures. It's an hour-long episode with Robert Duvall.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, I messed that one up a little bit myself.
See, I'm learning new episodes too.
There you go.
Yeah, because I mean, they're so. I'll say this: I don't like the last episode of the Twilight Zone.
Why not?
I feel like it just doesn't go out on a bang. Like, there's so many episodes that obviously, like, not everyone is going to be a hit. But I just feel like The Wishing Pool is just an episode that, I mean, maybe it actually poetically is the best episode, because justifiably it's about two kids who want to run away from their life and their parents, who I guess suck and stuff, and they go into the pool at their house. They go on the other side to a magical realm of an old woman who takes care of them. They can have cake and live it's kind of like Peter Pan. So in a way, it's like maybe, you know, the network is like the parents, and it's like you gotta, time to go, you're gonna get canceled, and Rod Serling's like, no, I want to stay in the Twilight Zone forever. And then in a way, symbolically, like that's him staying forever in the Twilight Zone. I mean, I'm figuring this out now.
That goes way deep. But I didn't look. I mean, I didn't look up why the show ended. Yeah. I mean, maybe it was a surprise to him or something like that. But
he wanted to move on and start doing.
I didn't like the episode for other reasons, but
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to justify it because I just don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, that's the last episode, but it is.
So, what were some of your favorite episodes? I mean, there had to be quite a few.
Yes. One Stop at Willoughby, Walking Distance, 1,000 Years Over the Rim, and A Stop at Willoughby. Those are my top.
Oh, wow.
And I already talked about the other one.
Yeah.
But those are my top, yeah.
Why did you like those?
I liked One Stop at Willoughby because everybody goes through depression.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to, you know, find a magical place to escape to. And so One Stop at Willoughby is about a man who, his boss is just like work. His wife is like more. And he just wants to go fishing and have a break. And, you know, at the end, after he goes into Willoughby, it turns out he jumped off the train and committed suicide.
Nice.
Nice.
But way to go.
You know, it's one of those things where it's like you have to really stop and focus on like, what do you really want? You know, before you take the leap and the jump, like, and that's another thing too. I feel like Rod Serling was really ahead of his time when it came to mental health, because back in the 50s and 60s, nobody was talking about depression and suicide and things like that. You just had to be perfect, take a few Adderall pills, and you'll be good, you know?
Even less than that. They actually would just give you like Xanax. That was very popular.
Yeah.
Xanax and a martini.
You know? So the fact that he's talking about... And the thing is, too, when it came to a Walking Distance, that's about a man who travels back in time to his old town, sees his old self, talks to his beautiful monologue at the end about life, and just, you know, you have to not share your summer in the past with your old self. You got to keep moving forward. You got to remember that life moves on. Just like I had to grow up and raise you, you have to grow up and raise somebody else.
Right.
And so it's just the fact that Rod Serling, you know, in the 50s and 60s, he took the leap not only in the genre of horror and being scientifically or sci-fi-ish, you know, and I just like that he was like, no, I'm doing not only a sci-fi show, not only horror, but I'm going to talk about mental health. Even the one where the woman is getting surgery and like different faces, and they take off, and it turns out she's perfectly normal. Like, to talk about mental health when it comes to people like seeing themselves as beautiful, like, it's just so, there's just so much from this show. Like, I'm not saying this guy was like a demigod, but for somebody to just write an episode that not only thrills you, scares you, makes you think about your future and your mental health, but just also like, just a nice feeling overall, like entertaining, like, just so captivating. You know, that's the level of writing that I really, really want to get to if I ever can, because it's just amazing that he could do all of that in one. But not every episode was popular.
No, and not every episode was great, but these are some really good points and characteristics about the show, because Rod Serling's background kind of coordinates and collaborates what he wrote about.
Yeah.
He was in the war. He was in World War I. That ended 5 years prior to him starting Twilight Zone. He was actually a paratrooper in the war, which is huge. I mean, this guy's jumping out of planes.
Yeah.
He was also a boxer, which is interesting. because he was only 5'4". So I don't know who he was boxing, but it said in his bio he was a former boxer. So I was like, well, good for him.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm 5'5". I don't think I could kick anybody's ass. So
it was all the mental stress on his mind.
Yeah.
He's like, I can be a serial killer or a writer. I'll just do both, I guess.
Yeah. He would have dreams about what he wanted to write, and he would get up and he would write those down. And it's very well known that he was an angry person. And I can see now that you're mentioning it, that correlation between mental health and his mental health was probably intertwined. And him talking about things that he's going through was really through these characters. Because if you look at a lot of the episodes, there's a common theme between all of them. There's Martians and going to the moon type of thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, we hadn't gone to the moon yet.
Oh, wait. I think I remember which episode you were talking about was the Gordy one. It's where these two astronauts land on a planet, right? And they find a little tiny town.
Oh, and they think they're gods. They claim themselves as gods or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not the first time. They actually have another episode with Agnes Moorehead. Agnes Moorehead, for those of you who don't know, played Endora in the TV show Bewitched. She was the mother-in-law who was always giving Durwood a bad time. But she plays this phenomenal scene. She's a phenomenal actress. And we're these tiny little Martians,
Attack of the Martians.
Yeah, and they kind of just take over, and they're literally this tall to her, human height and stuff. But they take her over, and they take over her life, and she has to deal with all that.
Yeah.
So he has, getting back to what I was saying, Rod Serling has common themes. So not only does he have the Martians and going to moons and going to satellites and asteroids and stuff like that, but he has a lot of military stuff in there as well. You'll see a lot of military episodes. You'll see a lot of hope episodes. So things like Guardian Angels. You'll see,
But that one, I mean, Carol Burnett, actually. Burnett, sorry.
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett. She was actually in the now famously most hated episode of the Twilight Zone.
I saw that and I didn't understand why it was that hated. I mean,
laugh track, and they were trying to do a spin-off. So there was 2 episodes with Guardian Angel that they were trying to spin off.
Yeah.
But, it just didn't really get anywhere. Actually, speaking about war and stuff, there's actually an episode with George Takai. Okay, I will remember your face for years, but will I know her name in 50 years? I don't know. I'm terrible at names, but
it's okay.
The Encounter was an episode that was banned for 52 years.
Amazing.
And
I watch it going, what, trying to figure it out myself.
Yeah, there's being straight up racist, and then there's just also talking about it. And I feel like he was talking about it more than just being a dick about racism,
You have to understand, back in the late 50s, early 60s, anything on TV had certain standards. And, if you notice that when couples went to the bedroom, they had twin beds. They never sat in a queen size or king size bed. It was always twin size bed. Yeah. So it was part of forgive me, I forget the name of it. It's like a committee that looks over television programs and decides whether or not they're of good faith and stuff. So,
because there's a lot of stuff that I feel like you're right. They take it down because justifiably it's racist, but then I feel like justifiably they're being weirdos about it.
Yeah.
And racist themselves.
Yeah. And, I looked at, so we were talking about the Encounter episode, and I'm realizing that where the racism was, it was conceptually, because he doesn't outwardly call him any racial names. He does not. In fact, the only thing that's happening is that George Takei's character has these moments where he's kind of having a mental flashback. You're not seeing what that is, but it's like he's taking on somebody else. Maybe it's his father,
Yeah.
We're trying to figure that out. But then we find out his father was a traitor.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of goes all over the place conceptually. So I can understand
maybe
maybe.
suicide at the end.
Oh, yes. And that scene actually made me laugh because so what ends up happening is the main character, he was trying to antagonize George Takei's character with this kind of back and forth of like, we should kill each other, we should not kill each other.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is the main character talks George Takei's character out of killing him with a samurai sword. And what ends up happening is that the main character falls on top of it and dies.
Yeah.
Then George Takei takes the knife out and then just jumps through the window, all feet and all. It's hilarious, actually. And he's like, "Banzai!" And he jumps through the window. But again, I don't know what.
And then you see George Takei now.
Yeah.
And how, like, silly and goofy. And,
Yeah.
you know, and I could see him redoing that scene, like, trying to be serious. I mean, I bet there was a point where, you know, every actor wants to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
But after you see him now and then you see that scene, it's hard to take it seriously. Like,
Oh, my.
oh my. He jumps out the window. Oh, my.
No, but I do want to give George Takei some credit there
Yeah.
because I had never seen his acting aside from Star Trek, which unfortunately he doesn't get to do a lot of in the series. But in this particular episode, he does amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I was absolutely shocked to see what a great actor he was. He was not utilized well in Star Trek, and I do feel bad seeing that scene in the episode The Encounter and not allowing him to be who he could be in Star Trek. What were some of the episodes you didn't like?
Besides the last episode and the Cavalier one, I think one of the episodes that actually is starring Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka, the original, is the bunker, the shelter. The shelter.
Ah.
Yeah, that one was it's funny because actually The Simpsons did a take on it, which is really, really funny actually. But then you get to the actual episode and it's just very boring.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, you have when you 5 characters looking for an exit, you know, it's literally people in costumes in an empty space, but it's so interesting, the dialogue. But to have like people in a room and have people scream outside, "Hey, let us in," it's just kind of pacing wise, it's very boring. This episode inspired The Good Place.
Okay.
It's called The Good Place.
Okay.
And it's about this guy who's a robber and he gets shot and then he goes and gets everything he wanted and everything. And this angel is helping him out, so he gives him beautiful girls and whatever and stuff. And at the end, the robber doesn't like living in heaven, so he's like, I want to go to hell, you know, and do bad things. And the guy's like, the good place, like, what made you think you were in the good place? You're actually in the bad place, getting whatever you want. And that's what inspired the TV show The Good Place.
Yeah.
What I don't like about that ending is the fact that it's very convoluted. And one, you kind of see it coming. Mm-hmm. But two, I don't really understand it. If I'm going a little bit off structure here, is the fact that if you're in heaven and you can do whatever you want, okay, and you're in hell and you can do whatever you want, isn't heaven gonna be just as boring and stuff? Like, this guy's in hell, he can get women, he can do that. Okay, I want to get caught by the cops, I can schedule that. It's like, you know, if you went to heaven, wouldn't it be the same thing? A bunch of beautiful girls, winning the lottery. But it would have. I'm going really, you know,
You can go there.
But it's like if the devil can cause him to win and not win, then can't Jesus also cause him to win and not win? So I don't really like the convolutedness of that episode. Well, you know, one episode I thought that you would like really well is The Curse about Cleopatra.
I did not see that one. No.
Oh,
I'm
man.
sorry.
I mean, I think you would really like that one just because of just like the actress who plays the main character, the way that the story develops and stuff. I would check it out before.
I will.
I don't want to, you know, spoil anything. One thing I just wanted to say real quick is what I really, really love and really developed is the makeup techniques, honestly. The Curse Before Time.
Yes.
Is about a man who... I think that's the right title, but a man who lived for 100 years and then he gets shot and he dies, and like literally they layered multiple different lights.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
So many good techniques.
Was that the one where the guy had lived for a couple 100 years and he had like a certain item from his grandpa that helped him live this long, and then if he was without it he would die? Is that the same episode?
Actually,
so many episodes.
No, this guy was from the Civil War, and he just feared death so much, and that he lived like forever, and but I mean, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, he was like some business exec type of thing.
Oh, Penny for Your Thoughts.
No, Penny for Your Thoughts is with Dick York, and that's one of the episodes I did not like. I discovered I did not like the actor Dick York. I don't know if you know who he is.
The York part sounds familiar.
Okay, so Dick York originally played the original Darren in the TV show Bewitched. And then he was swapped out with another guy with the name Dick Sargent. And then everybody's supposed to pretend like the two Darrens didn't exist. But yeah, Dick York was the original Darren. So Dick York is in an episode called Penny for Your Thoughts. And every time he flipped this coin, he would be able to hear people's thoughts. And so he was constantly flipping this coin, and then he eventually loses it or something like that. But it made me realize that Dick York was not a good actor at all. Here's why. He had no real dimension to him. He would have been okay as a comedic actor, but he really had one level to him.
Yeah.
I didn't see different levels to him that made him seem unique. When you see some of these other actors that are, I mean, the list is long of all the actors that were in the Twilight Zone series. You know, you look at William Shatner, you look at Leonard Nimoy, they all seem like completely different characters than what you were used to seeing them on Star Trek.
Yeah.
And when you see Dick York portray his character, he's the same one-note guy in Penny for Your Thoughts as he is in Bewitched.
Yeah.
And so
I could
like
see that.
he didn't add anything, and he was not good at all.
And that reminds me of actually the episode that I really hate. It's called Mr. Something's Day. I'm forgetting the title here, but it's about this man who really hates people and wants to just be left alone, and he thinks and this inspired Carrie, because he thinks about just the thought of hypnosis and like putting people away and stuff. And he wakes up and then everybody's gone. But now he gets kind of lonely, and now people are coming back, and it's just, man, like, not only was the story boring, not only did the actor who had to be all by himself not pick up the character, but the effects were just crap. Like, it was literally people wearing masks of the actor that you could see. And even in the 60s, people could be like, what the hell, Charles, is that? Like, Jesus. Yeah. Just so, like, I don't know. There's just some that I just don't understand got made. Like, if they didn't make those episodes, cut down from 34 to 20, and put the extra time into episodes like A Wonderful Life, you know? No, wait, that's the movie. It's a Wonderful Place, you know, with the little boy and stuff. Like, they could have had some really great ones, but no. They just went to 34 and said, we're going to stretch the budget.
Yeah. You know, it was a different time back then, too. You know, I mean, 35 episodes per season was a lot. It's absolutely unheard of. Typically, the most you'll have is 24 episodes per season. So 12 before Christmas and then 12 after the New Year is basically how it runs for a television series. So for them to had hit 35, same thing. Anyways, I wanted to talk about something that is very relevant to what was going on with the Twilight Zone when it was being aired. One of the things I had mentioned earlier is that we hadn't gone to the moon yet. The USA has not gone to the moon yet. And all these episodes where you see him talking about outer space, that all was a projection to what they were doing on radio shows back in the day. You know, like Orson Welles, you know, did some infamous shows about going into space, or that aliens were invading us. So we had so much of the unknown back then. And also, one of the biggest things that was happening was in 1964, we finally had civil rights, and segregation ended, and, you know, we were all starting to come together. And one of the things you'll notice in this series, there's only one episode of an African American lead. And if you notice, all the background actors and almost everybody he interacts with are all African American as well. The thing is you'll see two Caucasian actors that come to him, like his manager and then like the medical assistant guy. So you'll notice that there's always a slight difference, and the only one who's allowed to really get close to him is his manager. And then at one point, the boxer, who's supposed to be the lead, he kind of pins him against the wall. So a fight or an argument is like only allowed back then in terms of touching between the two actors because of their race. Now, if you see some of the other episodes, you'll notice that Rod Serling will try to sprinkle in different races, and specifically African American. You'll see it in kids. He'll try to impose little kids, but you'll even notice that the little kids, they get away with being closer to Caucasian kids, or even the Caucasian adults, but there's still a distance. There's still a distance between the kid, you know, if he's an African American kid, to the white adult, because it was still controversial back then. And there's several episodes, like there was one episode where a guy, Art Carney is the real actor's name, he's this drunk Santa, and all he wants is to really give kids some presents. And when he comes back to work and he's super drunk, there's a little African American kid who's by the train station, and you'll notice that Art Carney is still a little bit of a distance, a little bit of an arm distance from the kid. And so their scene is still a little bit away. So any kids that come up and try to sit on Santa's lap and that are standing in line, they're all white Caucasian kids.
Oh yeah, and even in the episode Kick the Can, there's no African American old person to be in the fun at the end. No. You know? And you're right. When it comes to the boxing episode, if you notice, one, they never ever show that episode for trailers or premieres or whatever.
You're right.
Two, that episode didn't have any mystical fifth dimensional Twilight Zone stuff.
It was,
It was honestly just a hard working story about a dad trying to do good. Okay.
Right.
Like there was, you know, they were literally like, yeah, we can't have this guy see an alien or be cool and shit. Like he's just going to be a hardworking boxer. Like I thought I was watching a Lifetime movie.
Right.
Or a Hallmark Channel thing when I was watching that episode. It was really like, you know,
Yeah, it was a feel-good moment because there's a young kid wishing for the sports figure to win at this, and everyone was rooting for him. It's very difficult because, I mean, that particular episode was made in 1960, so we're still 3 years away from civil rights on this. And
you're right about... Sorry, it's just you're right about the moon. I'm surprised Neil Armstrong didn't just walk out of his spaceship when he landed, because literally, like, they have them going to different planets and everything's fine. You can breathe perfectly fine everywhere in the universe.
There was no oxygen stuff needed. He was on asteroids. But we didn't know. We really didn't know who or what was needed when it came to outer space. That technology wasn't there. The discussion of the technology wasn't there. So even if you were trying to portray it in a real way, you wouldn't have known that information. It kind of, in some ways, was classified because no one could learn that in school. Only astronauts would be able to learn that, and astronauts weren't quite there yet.
I mean, there's so many gems in there, though, that like a one distance call, really heartfelt.
That is one of my favorites, to be honest with you. I mean, because don't you don't we all want to have that connection with our grandma or an old relative that passed and that we were close to and we could still talk to? So that is actually listed as one of my favorites. So Kick the Can was actually my top favorite because it actually reminded me of my dad. My dad, came from that era where they played Kick the Can, and he used to tell me stories about stuff like that. So, and I was very, very close to him. Yeah. And so, seeing that story where it brought back their youth was really sweet. And Rod Serling ended up doing other episodes where there's that level of they're on their way to die, but they found some type of fountain of youth to bring them back to who they used to be. And you could see where Rod had his fears and doubts about death because he brought it up a lot. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of episodes about death, either overcoming it or going into it.
Yeah, there's a really great episode about that where it's this old man, he's living on the countryside, everything's great, he got his dog and his wife, and he goes out to go fishing, and then he passes away. And as he's walking home, he doesn't realize he's dead until somebody tells him, and he's like, you can't bring your dog in here, you can't, have this, you can't smoke, and this guy's like, what? This isn't heaven if I can't do any of that, and he keeps walking and stuff, and then he finally gets to heaven, the right place. So it's like, I really like how even in the afterlife, he's like, you have to deal with the temptations and like the things I don't know. It's just a great episode to like, what if you did have to stop in front of hell and like get everything, like you just had to do that final test as a human being, like are you a good person or are you not? So, and I wouldn't go to any heaven where my animals aren't in, okay? Like
you don't think so?
No, I'm saying I can't go to a heaven where my animals can't be let in because that was a trick that it was hell. And so if Mrs. Fluffer's not in there, I'm not going.
Mr. Fluffers.
Yeah. So many great episodes. And even the bad ones, like I don't like the last episode, but I can dissect it and try to add something to it, which is great.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the last episode for a different reason. I didn't like the kids.
They seem a little bratty too, right?
Yeah, the kids had a little bit of entitlement issues to me. Yeah, it seemed realistic. Yeah, I didn't like that one either. That was one I didn't like for sure.
Yeah, because I would, even if somebody was the Pied Piper and they gave me, the chance to live in a land of wonderfulness, it's just like, it's still scary though, as a kid to go into a fantasy land and maybe never ever return, like I don't know. I loved when they broke the fourth wall.
I like when any show breaks the fourth wall. It always makes me laugh, like stupidly.
There's this episode called The Writer, and this guy basically he records like I want a woman with long hair, beautiful, sweet, nice, and this woman appears, and then when his wife comes home, he takes it and throws it in the fireplace, and the woman disappears.
Yeah.
And then as his wife is like a bitch, I'm just gonna say it. And so he's like, you know what, Charlotte, like, it's over. I don't want to do this. Just go live your life. And she's like, no, screw you. And she takes the tape, throws it in the fire, and turns out she was actually one of his recordings.
Ah.
And so my favorite wall break is that Rod Serling starts doing his monologue at the end, here in the Twilight Zone. The guy's like, hey, Rod, what did I tell you about monologuing? And he takes his little strip that and throws in the fire. And he's like, well, that's it, folks. And he fades away like the wife. And I'm like, that's the best wall break ever. The biggest insecurity, surprisingly, with Rod Serling was his teeth.
He was insecure about his teeth?
Yeah, like you might think he's insecure or,
about his height, maybe.
About his height.
He was 5'4".
Yeah, or his mental health. But no, the reason why he's standing like this.
Yeah.
And his mouth's a little like that is because there's a chip in the middle that he constantly tried to hide. But
I saw that, but I didn't think it was a big deal.
Right. Nobody thought it was a big deal, but he constantly tried to hide it and stuff. So, we're over here talking about what was the biggest mental things, about Rod Serling. And I'm like, actually, though, it was his chip in his tooth. Actually, you said that he got angry. What would he? Do you know what he got like angry about, or was it just
no?
Like,
it just said he was well known for being an angry person.
that's like a lot of entertainers, honestly.
But that, I mean, if I were to guess, since he was a former boxer and he was in the war, I mean, if he was getting hit in his head a lot, anger is an injury from boxers, especially back then. They were not as safe as they are now.
No.
So if
Andre
he was
the Giant hitting you.
Oh, yikes. Yeah. And I'm sure Rod got hit a lot. I mean, the guy was only 5'4". He didn't look like he weighed anything. So I don't know who was hitting him, but they joggled that part of him to make him an angry guy, and I feel bad.
But isn't that it's kind of interesting though, that when it comes to the boxing episode, when it comes to the war episodes, they're not like, there's a war episode where two people trade bodies and stuff, and there's some mystical double stuff going on, but maybe that's what the Parent Trap, the Jodie Foster one, was inspired by. Maybe that episode. Possibly, but I mean, every episode when it involves war or some type of boxing, like it's more of a sentimental story than it is a sci-fi something. Like you could tell, like he really took the time to be like, no, this is my life. I'm gonna tell a story, not an episode on a TV show. When it came to those, like that's
they all had a meaning too, even if it didn't go into the fifth dimension of Twilight Zone.
Of course,
they all had a meaning back there, and that was so interesting. It's like, this was a part of him. When you realize he was a boxer and a paratrooper and he was in World War I, that makes a huge difference, because now he's explaining from his own truths.
Exactly.
And so you get what and where he's coming from and why these episodes exist. This is really about his own mental health. He was talking about what he knew and how he felt, and maybe he was so young when he went in, because don't forget, back then you didn't have to be 18 to go into the war. You could be a lot younger. You could be 15. Can you imagine a 15-year-old in World War I? It happened.
But that's
it totally happened.
That's why I like that he wrote those episodes with more care and love. Like the one with George Takei, like it's not this mystical sword that's possessing him per se. It's a guy dealing with mental health issues, and it's just it's he had his fun, and he did crazy episodes, but when it came to stuff that he went through, you could tell he really sat down and put a little love letter on top of it. You could see how there was too many truths to it, and it was like, oh wait, where's this coming from? But I mean, it was adding to the story, it was adding to the plot, but you could totally see it. And you were mentioning, and you've been mentioning about how this is a lot about mental health. And one of my favorite episodes was Miniatures with Robert Duvall. And it sounds like you did some research too, and you probably discovered that there's a lot of discussion that particular episode was possibly about someone having Asperger's, and that this was really an episode about that. And so I actually rewatched it last night just to see if I saw that, because I didn't initially watch that episode with that in mind. So I rewatched it last night, and I can see that. I could absolutely see why people thought that, because he was very rigorous in his own ways, and things had to be a certain way. He also had a certain sense of common sense that when he got sent to the psych ward, he knew how to manipulate the doctor and convince him that he was all better. And then in the end, he ends up with the little young lady in the miniature house. His actions and his movements and his eye stares and his pauses and the way he spoke, it sounds just like those characteristics of someone having Asperger's. So I get it. When he moved the miniatures, did stuff happen in the town? Is that the episode I'm thinking of? Oh, see, there's another episode. There's so many miniature episodes.
There are, No, there's a couple.
But I heard that, I did hear that they actually thought that maybe his character was developed on that principle. And I mean, if it is, it just shows another level of him wanting to develop more.
A lot of the episodes that you watch, some of them had so many different kinds of meanings and so many different messages that they gave out. Like, one of the things I noticed is how society would view you. So they had episodes where women wanted to be perfect or to fit into society. So they were trying to look like everybody else. So one was like pig snouts, and the other one was she didn't look anything like everybody else. And I think it's still relevant today. I think a lot of the messages and things that he was trying to tell people are still so relevant today, in that don't get caught up in all this stuff. Don't get caught up in the beauty. Don't get caught up in your own life, that you're not paying attention to everything around you,
Yeah, and also just don't be a dick about things.
Yeah, don't be a dick is also one too.
Yeah, there's a really crazy episode where it's called Lights Out, and it's like this guard is just a real big asshole to a bunch of blind and deaf people. And so they lock him in a room, and they put his dog in another room, and then they build this makeshift hallway with like just nails and little things in it and just crazy stuff. So the guard slowly goes through the wall. He can barely make it. And then they let out his dog, which haven't eaten in a month or like a couple weeks. Gosh. And then they turn off the lights, and all you hear is just the screaming. And it's like that's great too. That's great directing, because it's the fact that we don't have to see the blood or the shed or the torture porn like with Jigsaw or Saw. Like you just the mental. It's crazy what the human brain can come up with, and the fact that he made so many scenarios of the poltergeist girl. Like we know where she is, but we don't know where she is. Like, he made sure that your brain came up with the horror that he was just introducing. Like that's and that particular episode that you just mentioned is almost identical to the Blair Witch Project, where you're constantly creating your own imagination to what you think is going to happen or what is happening, based on how they kind of set it up a little bit in the beginning, and then they go throughout the whole movie. But yeah, you can see how his show and this series was so influential for so many other things ahead of time, not just horror, but so many other types of shows out there. And it was a stepping stone too, to have some of the episodes that he had. Hiring African-American actors was very controversial at the time. So the fact that he would have them in there, even if they were background, was a huge thing. Him talking about being on the moon when we hadn't even been there. I don't believe we get to the moon until I want to say late 60s. I want to say 68, 69. Probably 69. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, the fact that he had this imagination, he had this creativeness while having a message on it all was huge. That really set up so many other types of show. I think his show was the beginning. It was a step into showing people you can create something, have a message, and have it be a poignant show that is even educational. It's meaningful and while entertaining you. Like, I love what you say there, because it's like Monsters Due on Maple Street is a famous episode, okay? Yeah. But I love the ending, because he's just like, guys, if we have humans can't even handle a few lights flickering off, can we really handle a war? Yeah. And he's also telling people, I've been through a war. So shut up your nonsense with these, just to be humble and stuff. Like, I love the ending to that one.
Well, this is the point of the podcast where I like to play Stump the Guest.
Cool.
So this is where I like to stump the guest and asking them trivia questions that I make super hard so they don't know all the answers. Okay, are you ready for your first trivia question? How many episodes of The Twilight Zone has Burgess Meredith appeared in?
52.
Really?
Wait.
Do you know who Burgess Meredith is?
Oh, Burgess Meredith. 4.
Ah, you got it.
Okay.
All right.
Do you know Jeffrey Combs?
No, do you?
Yeah, he was, he played in all 5 seasons of The Twilight Zone. Stumped my host there.
Yeah, you did stump me there. All right. So what episode is based on an Academy Award-winning short film?
The Owl Over the Midnight Bridge.
You're super close.
The Owl Over the Creek Bridge.
Yes, that one. Yeah.
Got an Oscar.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I am not stumping you that well. I should have. Okay.
Woo!
So, which Star Trek character did not star in any of the episodes?
Okay, well, we got George Takei.
There's one.
Takei. We got Leonard Nimoy.
Yep.
We got William Shatner.
That's true.
The Doctor guy didn't star.
Oh, the brain's working. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That was DeForest Kelley who did not star in it.
Hey.
Last question, and it's a multiple choice.
And she's going to buy my dinner if I get it.
Oh, chicken parmesan all the way.
Woo! Okay.
All right. So Roz Serling was thought to be a complicated man. One of the most mysterious things about him is that no other writer on the show was allowed to use a specific word. What word was that? It's multiple choice. You ready? Mm-hmm. A, was it Satan? B, Hollywood? C, God? Or D, Jesus?
Hollywood.
No, it is God. Writers were not allowed to write God down. All right, well, that wraps it up for this episode. We hope you had a great time listening to what we had to say. My special thanks goes to Faye for being my special guest and talking about the Twilight Zone. Faye, tell everybody where they can find you.
Hey, thank you, Celeste, for inviting me on. You can find me at YouTube to Welcome to Faeland or 24 Loofahs, and also on Instagram at Faybay24 or Welcome to Faeland or 24 Loofahs. Mm-hmm. Thank you again, and I enjoy your content. I will be checking it out more.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys do too.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Faye. It's been an absolute pleasure and so much fun today. For our listeners, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. This has been Ladies on a Roll.